be discussing message defaults. This was a client request. Hopefully I am able to answer all the questions. Maybe our support team already beat me to it, but I'm sure going to try, and I think it's a really good topic to be discussing today, just because I don't think a lot of people, you're maybe aware of it, but don't really know what some of it does. So we're going to take a look at message defaults, where they're located, who all can access them, where they access them, things like that. I'll also point you in the direction of some good documentation. A little bit about myself, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Taylor Craig. I'm a platforms consultant here at Kineo, so I get to train you guys, I get to do office hours, I get to work with all of our clients and work really closely with our solution architects, sales team, and our support team. So I wear a lot of hats, and I enjoy it here at Kineo. About office hours, what we do in office hours is we cover about a 15-20 minute feature presentation, talk about something Totara. If you have any suggestions, you have any ideas, pass them my way. We want to know what those are and what you want to see. We've got a big list of things that we're going to cover, but we can always add your stuff to the list. That's not a problem. We would love to do that. We can always finagle and move stuff around so that we address your question first. So please send it to us. You'll see a link inside of your weekly email that gives you a link of a location where you can go to make those requests, and we check that regularly. So please do that for us. We do post the 15-minute feature presentation up to YouTube for future access. That is public knowledge. Anybody can access that part, but we do have 45 minutes of open floor question and discussions. So feel free to bring me any of your questions that you may have. I am happy to address those and happy to talk about anything with you and try to work something out for you. If I don't know the answer, I bet you I know somebody who does. Okay. Today we're talking about message defaults. Now, message defaults encompasses a really large area of stuff inside of Totara, for lack of a better word. And really it kind of boils down and narrows down to messaging. For those of you who are familiar with Moodle, you are probably aware that the messaging inside of Totara is built off of the Moodle messaging system. That is just core to Moodle, and it's core to Totara as well. There are a few differences as far as how it functions in Moodle and how it functions in Totara. In Totara, it has a lot more, it has more legs. It does more stuff. So it does need to be turned on for the most part if you're going to be utilizing things like the task block, the alerts block. So it ties into lots of different Totara features. I will show you those, where those are located and kind of how that functions. Now, if you don't want it on at all, we can turn it off. We can turn it off for your users where they can't access it. There's ways about going about doing that where we're not turning it off for the entire system. You would be doing that more so through permissions, stuff like that. But yeah, there's ways to turn it off, but if you do turn it off completely, you're going to affect some stuff. You're going to affect your task block, your notifications block. You're going to affect quite a few different locations. First things first, we're going to take a look at where you make those administrative changes. We'll talk about where users can make their own changes as well. Users actually have the same access to the same similar message default screen that admins see. So we're going to take a look at that. And then we'll talk about kind of pointing you in the right direction as far as documentation. Now you'll notice that the documentation here that we have listed, it's actually Moodle documentation. Moodle gives a little more detail as far as what each and every one of those defaults and what all of those little settings mean. There is two slight differences if you look at a Moodle instance compared to a Totara instance, and it's literally just the task and alerts block. Okay, so those are going to be your major differences there. Now, let's actually dive in and take a look at what this might look like from a couple of different perspectives. We're going to look from an admin's point of view. Let me get this pulled up. We'll slide this across. Okay, so first things first, where in the heck is all this stuff located? Okay, you mentioned messaging, but where is it? So inside of all Totara instances, now this is a Totara 9 instance, so if you're using an older version, and you won't have this drop-down menu. If you're using an older version, look inside your navigation block, look inside your administration block. I believe it is under navigation and then like under your username, and then you have access to messaging there. If you guys want to hang around with me a little bit longer, I can pull up an old instance and we can take a look and see. But in a version 9 instance, there is going to be a drop-down underneath the user's name, and you have the option to select messages. Now, this particular area is where you would go in to search to find someone to send them a message. I have the ability to search every single person on the system, and that's not just because I'm an administrator. Okay, so keep that in mind when utilizing messaging. So I'm going to look for Aaron Hart. So I'm just going to search for Aaron. Okay, and I see that I have some messages that have been ongoing with him. So I can actually click into this message that's already existing. Okay, so I can see that there are recent messages, all messages. I see that we have gone back and forth. I see that this is Aaron, this is me. I can send him another message. So we're going to go ahead and send that. I say we're going to send that. Let's go ahead and run cron just for funsies. What I'm doing here, guys, I'm running the administrative chronological script. Sometimes it helps push those through. This is a demonstration site, so we sometimes don't have it set up to send things immediately. So that may help here in a minute. We should be able to hopefully see that when we come back across as Aaron. So if we take a look from Aaron's perspective, let me get him pulled up over here. Okay. Here is Aaron's perspective, and what he sees, you'll see that he sees a little pop-up box down here in the bottom corner, and he's also getting things popping through on his alerts block. So I talked earlier about the alerts block and the task block. So the alerts block, you're going to see things pop through on the alerts block depending on some of the settings that you have turned on. But he sees that he has new messages here, and then he also gets a pop-up window. So he can either ignore it there, and then he can go take a look at it here. Okay, so he gets the message from our admin user. Is there anything else I can help you with? He can come in here, he can view all of his alerts, and he gets these messages from our admin user. He can also go into his messages area, and from here come in and actually respond back to the administrator. Okay, so that's going to be kind of the messaging option that we have here. You'll see here these did end up popping through. So my running the script apparently helped. In your particular case, on your production site, we would have it set up to run very frequently. Again, this is just a demonstration site. We don't have it set up to run that script very often. So sometimes we have to run it manually, and then sometimes we even have to wait for it to run on its own. So that's why it took a minute for that to come through. However, we're able to see here where people are able to communicate back and forth with one another. So now let's talk about how you turn this stuff off, how you turn it on, all of that good stuff. So the kind of the admin side of things. So I'm jumping back over. I'm in as the administrator. So underneath site administration, if you decide, ooh, you know what, we don't want people doing that at all, that's going to be underneath site administration, advanced features. But again, you've got that disclaimer of your alerts and task block. So I'm just going to do a control find. It makes it a little bit faster for me. You'll see here now I've got a little message that's popped up in the bottom corner. It's letting me know Aaron has contacted me back saying, hey, here's my message, right? So here's where you have your enable messaging system. If you can uncheck this and save, it'll turn everything off. But pay attention to that note. Okay. Now there are some permissions around this. So underneath permissions, define roles. If you're going to mess with your permissions, I recommend that you contact us. Shoot us a little message in the support portal. Say, hey, we'd like to maybe look at the permissions. Which role do we do this for? So I'm looking at authenticated user here. And I want to be able to search, so I got to give it a minute. Okay, so here's where you can kind of turn things off and on. I would do that more so probably from a permission standpoint than turning it off as the system as a whole, especially if you are planning on doing things like the alerts and the task block. Okay, so there are some messaging permissions that go along with it. All right, so let's also look at kind of the defaults that people have the ability to access. Now, this is going to be from the administrator's point of view. So basically, you're setting your system default for everyone across the site. Now, that's going to be located underneath site administration, plugins, message outputs, default message outputs. So these are all the different types of messages that can potentially be sent out. So we've got alert notifications, so that's our alerts block. Task notifications, that's going to be down here. I think it's all the way at the bottom. Yeah, task notifications, so that's your task block. And then you have all of these in between. Now, all of these that are in between are defined quite well at Moodle.org. So let me just pull that up so that you can see it, assuming I can find my link again. And I will be sure to post this link with the recording. I'll put it in the comments so that you can access it. While that's loading, let's go ahead and take a look at these. So you have assignment notifications. This is going to tie to the assignments module. Okay, warning when your quizzes become overdue. That's tied to the quiz module. So if you have a due date set on a quiz, it's going to let people know that they're receiving things that are overdue. A lot of these things are exactly kind of sort of what they sound like. They're going to tie to the module or the plugin or the activity or resource that it's referring to. So badges, quizzes, course creation, request approval notification. If you are using that particular feature in the system where you're having people request that the administrator create them a course. Those are all, again, kind of exactly what they sound like. But if you're needing a little more detail, if you go here to this bit of documentation, Moodle has done a really good job of listing the output name, giving you a little bit of a description, and then who the individuals are that actually receive those notifications. So some people may not really receive those notifications, but let me kind of decode this in Totara speak. When you see teacher, that is editing trainer or trainer in Totara. When you see student, that is learner. Okay, so that's just going to kind of give you some ideas as far as decoding that, as far as the role that you're working with. Okay, so let's jump back over here. We're in as the administrator. We have the ability, you'll notice across the top, to turn things off and on based on the task block, alerts block, the pop-up notification. So we saw the pop-up notification a moment ago. It's just that little box that pops up in the bottom corner. And then email. If your email is turned on your site, some of you may have it turned off on your site. Different people have different reasons for having it on or off or whatever. But if you're utilizing email, in that case, keep that in mind that you do have the ability to control this. So you'll notice that we have some options. We have disallowed, which means that if you set it to disallowed, your learners won't be able to do anything. They won't be able to turn it on. They won't be able to, won't really be able to use it. Okay. If we have permitted, that means that they can do their own thing as far as what they choose here. And if we say forced, it means that what we have set, that's what they got to go with. Okay. So we've got that option for all four of these. We also have an enabled checkbox. So if we want this completely turned off, we're never going to use that notification, we can disable it completely. Okay, so let's look at the same screen but from the learner's perspective. Where the learner accesses this, very kind of similar, but they're not going to go about it from administratively. They're more concerned about it from their own perspective. So underneath my name, I'm going to go in here to Preferences. There's a lot of different things that they can do here underneath the Preferences screen, but we're concerned more so about messaging. Okay, you're going to notice that he's going to see different things. It's going to look kind of similar, but we see personal message between users, when he's logged in, where does that appear? Does that come in through the task block? Does that come in through the alerts block? Does he receive that in a pop-up notification? How does he receive that? He can choose what he wants to do. Now, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to jump over from the administrator's view, and we're going to find that same notification. We're going to make an adjustment to it. So I'm going to do a control find, paste that in. So here is the administrative permission for that particular one. Now, you'll see that all of these are permitted at this point. So what we can do, we could turn this off, say that it's disabled. We don't want people to be able to send personal messages between users. So we can turn that particular feature off and save. And then what we can do here is we can come back over from Aaron's perspective. Let's refresh and let's see what happens to that. Let's look at Aaron. So personal messages between users. Let's see what happens when we refresh. It disappeared. Okay, so he doesn't even know that it was ever an option. He doesn't have the ability to make any changes or adjustments at that point. It just kind of goes away for him if we disable that. Back over here as the admin. Let me find that again. If we re-enable it, and then we can say, you know what, I want to manage this a little bit different. I'm going to let them do it, but as far as defaults are concerned, I'm going to force these defaults on them. So we can save those changes. And then over here is Aaron. When we refresh, you'll see that he sees that a little bit differently. He now sees that he can control what happens as far as the alerts block is concerned and the task block and email, but as far as the pop-up notification, that's forced. He's going to get a pop-up whether he likes it or not. Okay, so that's going to be kind of how you would manage those as far as what the learner would see and what the administrator sees, how you're going to make those changes for those users. So that's all we've got for you today. I hope that it was beneficial. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions about this or anything else. I am going to turn it back over to you guys, assuming I can find my slides. There we go. All right, we've got quite a few people today, so I'm going to ask that you raise your hand, and then I will give you a mic.